Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you here today. We'll just give a few minutes for people to enter the webinar, and then we'll get started. We had a lot of interest for today's webinar. Feel free to write in the chat where you're tuning in from. If you're just joining us, welcome. My name is Shiri Orion. I'm the Executive Director of the American Friends of the Parent Circle. We're happy to have you here today. We're just giving people a few minutes to log on. Wonderful to see people coming from all over the United States. I don't think I've seen any internationals yet, but oh yes, UK, hello. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Shiri Orion, for those of you just joining. I'm the Executive Director of the American Friends of the Parent Circle, and we are very excited to have you here today. I'm especially excited because I get to share with you a project that we have been working on for a long time in response to a big need that was made very clear to us very quickly after October 7th. And we'll get more into that. Today, we're going to have the opportunity to reflect back on the past year, what led to the creation of Listening from the Heart, this peace education program that we created. I'm going to walk you through the program so you can see it firsthand. And we'll also have the opportunity to hear from some college students that have used the program, so you can hear their experience with it. We'll take questions. We'll give you an opportunity to sign up for a training that we're going to be having for the program for Listening from the Heart. Just a little bit about why we called it Listening from the Heart. We were traveling and talking to different communities, and one of the members in our program said, her name is Robbie Damlin. She said to them before she even started anything, she said, just take your signs and put them to the side. Take your social media posts and put them and lay them down next to you. Take down your flags and just push all of that away and just listen from your heart. And that's really the essence of the work that we do, and I'll get more into that. Before we get started, we're going to take a poll that is going to give us a better sense, and all of you a better sense, of what community do you represent. So if you could select one of these or one or more of these options of who you represent, or you might not represent a community, which is fine too. We're happy to have you. A lot of universities, a lot of communities of faith I see, a lot of people here as individuals not representing a community. Everybody see these results? I think so. Okay, looks like everybody has responded. The majority of people are here don't represent a community. And then the next highest, there's from community of faith. And then I guess the next after that would be from universities. A few from professional associations, a few from companies, and some others. I guess I can share results. Okay, thanks for that. If this is the first time that you're joining and you don't know Parent Circle, a little background about us. Is Parent Circle is a joint Israeli and Palestinian organization made up of bereaved families. All of them have lost a loved one to the conflict, and all of them have chosen a path of reconciliation rather than revenge. So what that means is that these are the people that have paid the highest price to the conflict. There's nothing worse than losing a child or a brother or sister or parent to a violent, needless act. And they have chosen this extraordinary path of speaking together and working together to say that if they who paid the highest price can do this, then certainly those of us here from Philadelphia and London and Sherborne, Massachusetts, we should be able to do that as well. The organization runs through two offices, one in the West Bank and one in Tel Aviv. We have two directors. We have two spokesperson, two program managers, two of everything. And we do everything as a joint organization, which is often difficult. These days, sometimes it's a miracle, but it's absolutely necessary and a principle that we are committed to. And so our members speak at schools, they speak to community events, they speak in the media to create this possibility and an alternative to violence, an alternative to war that's possible. The American Friends of the Parent Circle, the organization that I run, is based here in the US. We're a 501c3 organization, and we raise, until October 7th, our primary function and role was to raise awareness and support for the work that was being done in Israel and Palestine. Since October 7th, that has changed dramatically. We in the United States and Canada and from wherever we are from all over the world have done an incredible job at importing the Israeli and Palestinian conflict into our communities. And so after October 7th, our organization here in the US was inundated with calls and requests for help to help their communities heal. How do we talk about this? We have, neighbors not speaking to each other. We have members of congregation not speaking to each other. We had Fortune 500 companies calling us saying our staff is not speaking to each other. The World Bank, multinational, international organizations were unable to function properly. There was so much polarization. There still is. There's so much division, so much hatred, and sometimes even violence, as we've seen on college campuses all over the United States. We knew that we had products that work, right? We've been doing this work in Israel and Palestine for years. We have something called the dialogue meeting. It's when one Israeli and one Palestinian go into a classroom or some sort of setting and share their stories, their personal stories of who they lost and why they made this choice as a way of inspiration. And it's often the first time that people meet someone from the other side. It's often the first time that they hear about the human cost of the conflict, and that they can talk to someone from the other side as a human being. So we know that the dialogue meetings work. We've been doing this in Israel and Palestine for 20 years, and we have some data that Christopher will show. Thank you, Christopher. It's coming. There we go. So we know that the dialogue meeting model works. So in Israel and Palestine, when participants attend the dialogue meeting, they show these results: an increase in empathy, an increase and positive change in the perception of the other, a desire to learn more about the other. And one of the most important things, I think, is the increased belief in the possibility of peace, because hopelessness is real and people often feel that there is nothing that can be done. And so this increased belief in the possibility of peace is essential. So we started to use this dialogue meeting model of bringing a pair of one Israeli and one Palestinian to speak to American audiences virtually. That was the next best thing we could do. We don't have the capacity to bring two members live in person to all of these communities in the United States. So we started speaking virtually to dozens and dozens of communities. If we can show the next slide, here's some of the reach. In 2024, we met with over 70 communities in the US and Canada. We met with workplaces, universities, towns, local towns, and these are some of the notable universities we met with during that year. This was all a virtual, like on Zoom, and yet we could not keep up with the request. Oh, one more infographic next. We know that these virtual dialogue meetings also work. Here are some of the outcomes. We evaluated the students or the participants who were involved in the virtual dialogue meetings and see, these are some of the outcomes that they showed. And then we also asked them about what feelings do you carry from the meeting? And for those of you who have never seen this kind of thing, the bigger the word is, that means they selected that word most often. So people said the most often words used were humanizing, hope, understanding, appreciation, belief. Those are the sentiments. So we have a product that works. We have a model that works. There were limitations. There's a time difference. There's just, a number. There's so many requests that were coming in that we couldn't keep up. And so that's what led to the creation of Listening from the Heart. We partnered with Georgetown University, who have been our academic mentors and partners for many years and helped us develop other programs. And we created a online program, a peace education online program that modeled the dialogue meeting model and was available to everybody online on demand. So whenever you want to use it. It was endorsed by the American Federation of Teachers. And we've had our first Northeast College tour just this past September, and we spoke and shared the program at universities like Harvard Divinity School, Brandeis University, Columbia, NYU, really some of the places that need it the most, and that we've seen terrible climate and interactions with students around. So this is just beginning, and we're going to be able to now, I want to walk you through the program. Before we do that, I want you to watch the trailer of the videos. So the program is made up of 3 videos, and this trailer is gives you some highlights.
An Israeli border police shot and killed my 10-year-old daughter, Abir.
They killed 5 people that day. One of these guys was my 14-year-old Smadar.
When we reached the hospital, they said it's too late to save his life.
The army came to tell me that David had been killed by a Palestinian sniper.
About 8:13 in the morning, they were shot with an RPG grenade, and all 4 of the soldiers, including Yanai, were killed at the post.
I heard the stories of the Israeli and how they lost their beloved ones. That was the first time I looked at them as a human like me.
If we can call each other brother, anyone can. Anyone should.
I wanted to do something to prevent other mothers, just like you and me, from experiencing this kind of pain.
If you want to make peace with your enemy, you need to work with your enemy. Then your enemy become your partner.
I'm here and I'm in terrible pain at the loss of my son, but I also see your pain.
What do you think about the international reactions to the violence in Israel and Palestine?
When I show empathy for one side, I'm told I'm being anti-Semitic or anti-Palestinian. How should we deal with that?
The work you are doing actually has an impact. How do you know?
Okay. I'm going to share my screen now and take you on a tour of Listening from the Heart. So when you go to www.parentcirclefriends.org/listening, you arrive on this page. This is the trailer that you just watched. This is an overview of what you get. So really the program is made up of a few things. One are 3 video testimonies made up of different pairs of bereaved members. We have a facilitator's guide, which is a PDF that allows people to facilitate the program without having to have any sort of prior information or prior knowledge of the conflict, and an online course in which we've taken the videos and the facilitator's guide and put it into a very easy to use online course. Here are some of the testimonials of people that have used the program. Mayors of different towns and cities in the US, different high schools, Rotary Club of Michigan, and some frequently asked questions. So now if I'm logged in, I'm going to go to this page because this is when you buy the program, this is what you get. This is what it looks like. So you'll see here we have the facilitator's guide, and I'll download that so that you can easily see it. Now we've divided the program into 3 main sections, okay? Well, actually 4 main sections. There's a background for facilitators, okay? So you can learn more about the pedagogy, about the model, the dialogue meeting model, who the program is for, and how to use this program. And this part is important because we've really broken it down into, I hope this is big enough. I can make this a little bigger. 3 components of the program. One is how do you prepare for the personal narrative exchange? Now we called it the dialogue meeting previously, but now we're calling it the personal narrative exchange. It's the same thing, but we just gave it a different name. So how do we prepare for that? How do we present the personal narrative exchange? Those are the videos. And how do we process them with our group? And then some resources and appendices. So I'm going to keep going through this just to give you a flavor of what's inside. And everybody who's here today is going to get a sample of this facilitator's guide. So for example, in the first section about preparing for the personal narrative exchange, we have how do you establish guidelines? Then we have a number of activities that the facilitator can use with their community. Each activity is explained in detail. So this one explains how do I establish guidelines? And we're going to do one of these activities together. I just want to show you the next section. The next section is about presenting the personal narrative exchange. And there are 3 exchanges, 3 videos. One is with Bassam Aramin and Ilana Kaminka. Ilana Kaminka is a mother who lost her son newly bereaved from October 7th. And second one is 2 mothers, Rabi Damlin and Laila El-Sheikh. And the third one is Rami El-Hanan and Bassam Aramin, who many people know as the protagonists from A Paragon. And it talks about how do you prepare your students or your community to go through this program. It also gives a little bit behind the scenes about the different members that they're about to watch. And then the next section is about processing. So after we watch the video, and I'll let us watch a little bit of the videos so you get more of a sense of what they are. There is how do we process the personal narrative exchange? So these are different activities that are included: individual reflection, journaling, unpacking reactions, group evaluation. How did we do as listeners? A big portion of this program is about developing skills for how to be a better listener, right? How do we listen when something is really triggering to us? And how do we let the other person know that they were heard? I think that is a big issue, that people don't feel heard and acknowledged, even when we disagree. And how do we listen even when we feel that what the person is saying is sort of denying our truth? So there are many skill building activities. Okay, why don't I take you through this module? So if you want to do the online course, again, you have the background for facilitators. It shows you what's involved here about the parent circle, what this program is about, what it's not about, who it's for, guiding principles, facilitator FAQs. So this would be module 1 for the facilitators. Then we would move to module 2, where you have the same thing that we saw in the facilitator's guide. Preparation activities, activity 1, activity 2. You can do as, like I said, you can do as many or as few of these activities as you'd like. I can show you, again, the establishing guidelines activity. So you would click on that, and it tells you how long this could take, the materials needed, the goal of the activity, the instructions. And again, you can adapt this for your group however you want. We're actually going to do one of these activities in a minute, but we would then move to module 2. Oops, yeah. Which is how to present the narrative exchange. So the section overview tells us what they're going to be seeing. We have people who we recorded pre-videos for each video to tell us about what we're going to be seeing, to sort of introduce. And then last but not least is the processing. The overview, again, activities. So individual reflection, individual journaling. Let me show you this example. Again, it tells you 15 minutes, the goal of this activity, the instructions, and how to work with your group on this. And last, we have, let me go back, some resources and appendices. So facilitator strategies, what to watch. So these are extra resources, what to read, that you can read to sort of prepare yourself to facilitate this, and some FAQs. Christopher, are we ready now?
Not quite, sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Why don't we do one of the activities together? So if we were in a room together, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. If you guys have questions about any of this, please put them in the Q&A box. There will be a time for question and answer soon. We are going to do one of the preparation activities together. So if we were in a room together with our group, I would mark one end of the room as strongly agree, and I would mark the other side of the room as strongly disagree. And I would prepare the group and say, I'm going to make a statement. And I'm going to, you need to go to the area of the room where you feel you agree with or you disagree with. So if you strongly agreed with the statement, you would go to that side of the room. And if you strongly disagreed with the statement, you would go to that side of the room. But if you're somewhere in the middle, it's a continuum. So go somewhere in the middle. Because we're doing this virtually, we're going to do it as a poll. So we're going to do a warm up first. So Christopher, if you can get us started. So the first opinion is I'm a morning person. So if you could select whether you agree or disagree. Let's see who are our morning people and who are not. Okay, it's a pretty even mix, but most people strongly agree. I guess peace builders are morning people, right? We got to get up early. So most people strongly agree. 27% strongly agree. So most people here are morning people. Okay, now let's get to a question more related to our topic. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is relevant to my life. I don't know if this is going to come as a surprise to anyone, but the majority of you here strongly agree and agree. I believe that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can be resolved. Most people agree. No one strongly disagreed. I'm afraid to talk about this topic with others. So a bit more mixed this time. Mostly divided between agree and disagree. But yes, a little bit more mixed. I have a direct connection with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Again, pretty mixed. Mostly agree though. Okay, so thanks for participating in those polls. If we were facilitating this for a group and some questions have come up around this. First, people are asking is this meant to be done online or in person? I would say it's preferable to do it in person, but it is possible to do it online. As you're seeing, it can be adapted in some ways. It can be done on your own. People are also asking whether this program is to be done on your own or with a group. It's possible to do it on your own. That wasn't the intention of the program. The intention is to do it with a group. There is no ultimate size, although you probably want to have a handle on the group. This is a loaded topic, as we all know. So, maybe a group of 30, 50 would be probably the maximum amount I would recommend for this program. But if we had just finished that preparation activity, we could, as a facilitator, we would now ask our group, what did you notice when you looked at the results of those questions? What did you notice about yourself as those questions came up? And what did you notice about the group? What common ground do we have as a group? Where do we differ most? And this is a preparation activity to get the group to understand themselves a little bit better and to understand the nature of the group. Before we talk to some of the people that have used this program, I think Christopher is now ready with the videos. I also want you to know that each video has an accompanying Q&A video. So we prepared questions for the two members, and then they answer them. And each video is about 20 minutes long, both they're sharing their stories and the question and answer. So if you wanted to show Robbie and Lila presenting their stories and then their question and answers, it would be probably about 40 minutes.
What do you think about the international reactions to the violence in Israel and Palestine?
There's this tendency to take sides. And I think to myself, why are you importing our conflict into your country and creating hatred between Jews and Muslims? Maybe you should start talking in another vein. Perhaps you could address the fact and tell the story of Lila that you heard, or the story of the loss of David, or about one of the hostages. How dreadful it must be to be a hostage, and then tell the story about a Palestinian mother in Gaza, and tell the story of what it's like to live in the West Bank now. That's compassion. That's not side-taking. You can stand with your flags and wave them wherever you like, but that's not going to affect her life or mine. So please, don't make this an excuse also for anti-Semitism or Islamophobia for that matter.
I think instead of sending weapons to this war to make it much more, if they spend that money to make peace, that will be much hopeful for us.
What do you think needs to happen to build trust for reconciliation?
Oh, wow. I think the most important thing is to bring both sides and put them together to speak. It's the main project that we do in our organization that helped me and helped the others to understand. It didn't mean that we will approve about everything in 100%. We still argue about a few things, but the most important thing that we start to respect each other, to understand each other. Like when Robbie said something, I couldn't understand why she said that, even if I'm not approve about what she said.
I think in many ways trust comes from the personal story. When I got to know you through your personal story, that was like the icebreaker. Yeah. I think the same story happened with Bushra and with Nasra. And the minute they understood that we shared the same pain, I think that was the basis of trust. And it's really been proved now in the parent circle there's a kind of miracle happening, because 2 days after the war we had a staff meeting and everybody had watched their media. You know, the Palestinians watched their media, the Israelis watched their media. It's like living in a parallel universe. And so you think to yourself, wow, if we can still listen to each other and trust each other enough, and even if we don't agree, that we listen with empathy, then that's an extraordinary thing to have happened. And
Okay. So that was the question and answer video, which you would watch second, but we showed it first by accident. Now you'll hear the stories, just a few minutes of the stories of Robbie and Lila.
My name is Layla Sheikh. I'm from Bethlehem, from a village called Batir. I'm 46 years old. I'm a Muslim Palestinian mother. I have 5 children, 1 grandson, and I will have another grandson next month. Maybe my story started before even I was born, when my parents went to Jordan, because my father, he was a teacher, and he went to Jordan to teach the children in the camps. But after that war was started in 1967, and the Israeli government took a decision not to give them or not to allow them to return back. I heard thousands of stories about Palestine, so I love it because of what I heard from my father. And that dream came true in 1999 after I met my husband in Jordan and came to Bethlehem to start our new life. And I was really so happy to be here and to have my new family here. After 2 years, we have 2 children, a girl and a boy. During that time, the second uprising started. So my son, at that time, he was 6 months old. His name was Qusay. And the 11th of April 2002, 4 o'clock in the morning, he woke up in very critical condition, because at that night the Israeli soldiers came to our village and they threw tear gas, and because of that he became so sick. And when we tried to take him to a hospital, they prevented us because they said Bethlehem, it's a military zone. So we tried to take him to Hebron, the next city to Bethlehem, but again they stopped us more than 4 hours. And when we reached the hospital, they said it's too late to save his life. At the end of that day, he died. From that day, I was filled with hatred, anger against many things, many people, but especially against the Israelis. At the same time, I didn't think to take revenge, because revenge will never bring my son back. But I take another decision that I don't want to have any kind of relationship with any Israeli, because for me, all of them were responsible about his death. And you know, time passed, and you think you live to take care of other children, and you do your best, but in fact, there's something stuck inside of you. After 16 years, I met one of my friends. He joined the Parent Circle, and he started to talk to me about the Parent Circle and how he joined the organization. And he tried to convince me, but I didn't think that was a good idea until he once said to me, "Why you didn't want to tell your other children about what happened to their brother?" I said,
Okay, so I just wanted to give you a sense, a taste of what the videos look like, what we call the personal narrative exchanges. So just like you heard Lila speak, you would have soon heard Robbie, the bereaved Israeli mother, speak. We have the pleasure of having 2 students with us here today. Elijah Kallenberg, hi Elijah, and Jad Hashem. Jad, are you here? There we go.
I am. Hello.
Hi, nice
How
to
you doing
see
today?
you.
Nice to see you.
Jad Hashem, he is the vice president of the organization called Atidna, and he's the head of Palestinian Dialogue. And Elijah Kallenberg, he is the founder and president of Atidna. And we had the opportunity to work with Atidna on their campus. And Jad and Elijah are here to share with us a little bit about their organization and their work with Listening from the Heart. So will one of you, first of all, tell us where you're talking to us from today and who you are?
For sure. Me and Jad are both coming to you from UT Austin. We are students at the University of Texas at Austin. And as you mentioned, Shiri, we are the president and vice president of Atidna International. What Atidna is we are the first and only student-led initiative unifying Jewish, Arab, Israeli, and Palestinian students for peace and dialogue initiatives on college campuses. The name Atidna, for those of you that speak Hebrew and Arabic, know that Atid is the Hebrew word for future, and Na is the Arabic suffix for our. When you put those two together, it means our future. We have two main goals at Atidna that we try to implement on college campuses. The first goal is to solidify that Jews and Arabs are cousins, one family, and not inherent enemies. And we do that by promoting peace events on college campuses. And our second goal is to bring together both peoples to have a conversation about anything and everything pertaining to Israel and Palestine. It's our firm belief by letting our two people speak, you can break down all the ignorance in the world. By allowing our two peoples to speak, we understand that we are more similar than different. Really, we enter this conversation as others, but we leave as brothers. And that's the power of dialogue. And I think that's definitely a shared value that you've tried to articulate indefinitely throughout this talk.
Yes.
We've been in operation since 2022. So we started around a year and a half before October 7th. But we definitely got pushed into the limelight because of October 7th and all the transpiring issues that happened on college campuses since. But currently we're at 10 college campuses across the country, and we're hoping to grow, and we're really appreciative. And I must say, Kol HaKavod, Listening from the Heart, and Parent Circle are integral. Now more than ever is when this work needs to be done, and you guys are definitely amazing. But I'll let Jad talk briefly about his role in Atidna and his journey in joining this work.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Well, it's great to be on. It's great to see so many people on this call, and I want to thank everybody at Parent Circle, of course, for having us. So as Elijah mentioned, Atidna was founded in 2022, but I actually joined in the summer of 2023, so still prior to October 7th. My background is that I'm Palestinian American. I'm a junior at the University of Texas. And as the vice president, I work with Elijah to basically coordinate both dialogue sessions and peace events at Atidna. And I really joined Atidna because when I first heard of Elijah, I really found that we had very similar goals to what we wanted to see, not only in the Holy Land, but also in the United States and on college campuses. And, even prior to October 7th, Elijah and I kind of felt that there was tribalism between our communities. There wasn't a whole lot of dialogue taking place. And Elijah and I, at our core, we believe that if we are to live together as one people, and if we are to solidify one another as one family, then it has to come with conversation. And if we don't talk now, then perhaps we never will talk, and it'll be too late. And so, obviously October 7th kind of switched things around, and we faced some personal losses, and we faced some losses in Atidna that we'll be talking about a little bit later. But now in almost November of 2024, over a year after October 7th, we're going strong. Atidna is now bigger than ever before. We've expanded now to around 10 college campuses, each of which are headed by at least one Jewish individual and one Arab or Palestinian individual. And we are very grateful for the work, for all the collaborators that we've gotten to work with. And we just hosted a memorial event maybe 2 weeks ago or so. We had a tremendous time doing it to just honor and commemorate the innocent victims who have been lost in the last year of this conflict since October 7th. And so that's all I'll say for now, but happy to be here. And Atidna's been a dream so far, and we hope to expand it and make it as big as possible.
Well, we're very happy to have you guys here today. Can you tell us a little bit about, excuse me, the climate on your campus after October 7th, and then sort of why you chose Listening from the Heart and how you used it in your community?
For sure.
Yeah.
Take the first one.
I'd be happy to. So I'll just talk kind of briefly about college campus climate, particularly in the spring of 24. And that's because we saw things at its most heated point with college protests. And that's not to say that things weren't tense beforehand or that they are intense now, but I would say April of 2024 was when things got very tense. This is where, especially at the University of Texas, we had protests planned by the pro-Palestinian camp. But very quickly, the University of Texas, with both the university president, Jay Hartzell, and also the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, they actually worked together to, before protests had even started, to completely shut them down. And all this did was add more fuel to the fire. And what this actually really saw is we saw at the University of Texas, protests really grow not only because of the pro-Palestinian cause, but also in response to what we believe to be the curbing of free speech on our campus. And now that things are, we're removed from that for about 6 months, things are still tense. What I will say is that it's not as visible, just because I think a lot of people who are not Jewish or Arab have sort of become apathetic to the conflict. But of course, if you are Jewish, Israeli, or Palestinian Arab, it's still very relevant to your life. And Elijah and I do a lot of work in talking to many different individuals and from all different backgrounds, but particularly those who are Jewish or Palestinian. And what we believe sort of is that the college campus climate right now is so tribal. And again, it may not be as visible to somebody who's just kind of passing by, but Elijah and I can see it. And really, some of that is because of the administration, but some of that also is just because of the fact that across college campuses, people are not choosing really to understand one another. There is a really big lack of nuance, in my opinion. And as much as I support the right to protest in several different factors, what oftentimes Elijah and I find is that with flags or with protests or chants or rallies, there doesn't actually seem to be that much concrete persuasion or empathizing that takes place. A lot of that has to take place with actual dialogue. And we found that the most effective way for people to understand one another and to come together with common goals is by having these conversations, whether or not you participate in protests or not. What Elijah and I have found is that the best way to decrease the tension on college campuses is with simple dialogue. And if we don't do that, we're actually causing the tribalism to be even worse.
Yeah, I'll just add a little qualifier to what Jad said. The issues we're seeing on campuses between Jewish and Arab students did not emerge because October 7th happened. They emerged far before that. In my freshman year at UT Austin, my most salient memory from my first Middle East Studies class was how divided the class was. On one half of the room was all the Jewish students, and on the other half of the room was all the Arab students. There was no overlap between the two communities. I thought maybe these people were just friends beforehand, and that's why they happened to self-segregate as such. But I learned it was a deep issue within the institution itself. There was no joint and civil space for our two peoples to even meet, let alone talk with the quote-unquote other. And that was the founding impetus for Atidna, to create that space, to have the conversations. Because, as Shiri has said, as Jad and I have both said, by having conversations, we learn we are more similar than different, and that leads to humanization and empathy. Regarding the atmosphere on campuses across the country, that notion is still alive and well. But in regards to listening from the heart and why we at Atidna were so happy to bring this resource into our community is because we on college campuses have the luxury of being removed from the conflict to a degree. Many of us have family or parents or grandparents who either were born in the land, lost loved ones, or were directly impacted by the conflict in some way, shape, or form, but we ourselves are removed as students here in America, most likely. We in conversations try to bring in family stories, have conversations about current events, but we ourselves are not living those events. It adds a completely new dynamic to the conversation when we can bring in the personal stories of individuals who have experienced loss themselves into this space. In fact, Jad mentioned we hosted a joint memorial 2 weeks ago. We actually brought in two very active members of the Parent Circle as speakers for that event, Ma'oz Zinon and Aziz Abu Sara, because they're individuals who have lost loved ones due to the conflict. And by allowing them to share their voice, and not only share their voice, show how they utilize their pain for mutual understanding rather than perpetuating a cycle of hate, that can allow individuals here in the diaspora to also open up their hearts, to hear the other side, to empathize, to understand their narrative. And that's what listening from the heart does. And that's why we were so happy to bring this into Atidna spaces. It definitely allows us to work toward Atidna's goal of solidifying our two peoples as one family rather than inherent enemies.
Thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself, but both of you, that lived experience is exactly what we're trying to show, right? I mean, we have imported the conflict into our communities, just like you guys have seen on your campuses. And yet the people who have paid the highest price are really living over there in Israel and Palestine. And so what sort of impact on your community did you find that listening from the heart had?
I would say it allowed a new dynamic of conversation to arise. Before we introduced listening from the heart, most people were arguing from a stance of as we said, removedness from the conflict. But now it pushed Atidna members to begin to have conversations with people in the land. And it pushed us as Atidna officers to also try to bring in people who have lost loved ones into Atidna spaces as guest speakers, as other individuals who can impart their direct lived experience on students here in the diaspora. And Maoz and Aziz were a prime example of that. And I would say overall, the broad effect is empathy. Overall, by hearing the stories of loss and pain, but not utilizing such loss for feelings of hate, but rather mutual understanding, that allows us to also come to similar conclusions. If they can do it, we can do it too. And that's the general premise we've seen from utilizing listening from the heart and from bringing in individuals who have otherwise had direct losses from the conflict.
Thank you,
Yeah, and
guys.
I
I mean,
will-
what we say is that it's not a quick fix, but it creates an approach to how we're going to talk about the conflict from a place of being heart-centered. Chad, did you want to say something to close?
I was just going to say, something that we find very valuable is that, when you bring up people's stories specifically from just a human perspective, it makes it much easier to empathize, because so many times, when we look at the news, for example, we'll see numbers of people killed or starved or whatever, but we don't take the time to really think about the stories behind a lot of these people. And, as a Palestinian, I know many Palestinians who may not choose to empathize with a lot of Israelis, but when you actually talk to someone like Maoz, for example, whose parents were killed on October 7th, it's impossible when you actually sit down with him to not extend your compassion and empathy to him. And so that's something that we find very valuable. And that's why, listening from the heart and just the empathizing factor on a human level is so important, more than just any sort of statistic could actually do.
Yeah, nothing can beat that.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Everyone, please check out Atidna. The link to their organization is in the chat. Elijah and Chad, you guys are doing excellent work, and I hope we can see more Atidna International chapters all over the United States. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
Toda means the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
In the final few minutes that we have together, I'm going to try and answer a number of the questions that I see in the question and answer box. A lot of people asked about conducting this without any training. There's some reservations around that. And so we are going to have a sign up for a training. We offer trainings for people who want to run this program for their communities. So you will be able to sign up. I think we're going to put a link to a sign up in the chat, or either that, or you're going to get an email with a way to sign up for the training. You don't have to be trained, but many people feel they want to be trained. Some people have already facilitation training experience. There are plenty of resources and strategies. The idea that are included in listening from the heart, the idea is to always bring it back to the human stories that we heard, to think about what would Lila say? What would Robbie say? How would they answer this from a human-centered, heart-centered approach? But that training is coming. We will have several trainings throughout the year. So when you get the sign up for the training, please be sure to register, because there will be a waiting list. There's a question about how can individuals who do not represent organizations use the materials. So I know that someone who organized a group of women to come over to her house, and she showed the videos in her living room, and they did some of the activities together. So you don't have to represent a community. Find groups of people that you naturally, organically connect with, bring them to a common space or your home, and go through the program together. There are questions about how many sessions is a curriculum, how many people. It's very versatile. Like I said, you can do this in one session, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend of an hour. I think that's too tight. Or you can do this over several months. It depends on the number of activities that you want to do. And once you buy the program, you'll have access to that. Now, about buying the program, people ask about costs. So we have committed to making this program free to all public high schools, all public schools. We wouldn't recommend that this program be used for kids younger than middle school. So all public schools, this program is free. For those that are not in public schools, the nonprofit rate is $850. And for corporations, I believe someone will write it in the chat. but I think the most people here are from nonprofits. Leo will write in the chat the cost for corporations or for-profit companies. You will all received in an email part of the facilitator's guide, so you can look at it more intimately and more closely, take your time and go through it and sort of be able to take a deeper look. Sorry, there it is, $2,000 for 6 months. So you get 6 months of access. High schools get free, nonprofit is $850, and $2,000 for corporate for-profits for 6 months of access. If you renew, you get it at a discounted rate. And we have a code for everybody here today. Yes, schools in Canada also. Thank you. The code is SAVE10. It's also up on the website. Yep, there it is. It's in the chat. SAVE10. That's the code. I know that there is still a lot of questions. I think many of them will be answered in the training. You can also email us. We will write our email address in the chat and ask us any of the questions. This program has the potential to be the leading resource for meaningful dialogue around Israel and Palestine. This model works. These are stories that come directly from people with lived experiences from the Israeli and Palestinian conflict right to your community. I think that's all the time that we have today. I want to thank everybody for being here, for your interest in listening from the heart. Feel free to reach out to us with more questions or to find out more. There's a lot of information also in the chat. Thank you, and please listen from the heart.